In my first video talking about why I love Persona 5, I talked about the music, the dark topics the game covers, the nostalgic feel of the game, and the combat. But because there are so many things to love about this game, I wanted to talk about everything else. If you don't already know, Persona 5 is a JRPG set in modern day Japan. It's a hyper-stylized and psychologically dense game. It focuses around the life of a young boy and his friends that he meets in high school. The game is focused on strengthening the bonds of your relationships, which in turn makes the game characters stronger in battle. All of the combat in the game takes place in an alternative reality that's a physical representation of people's consciousness, which leaves a lot of room for creativity, which Persona 5 takes advantage of beautifully. The setting is perfect for an RPG game where you have to make choices, develop your character, but that also means a lot hinges on the quality of the writing of the story and characters. And the consensus is that the developers really nailed it. There are times where I played for hours and didn't see any combat at all. While the combat isn't an afterthought, it's just not the main focus. I think it's safe to say people come to a Persona game primarily for the characters and the story, which is what we are going to talk about right now.
So you left your hometown and you're living here now, huh?
The main story of Persona 5 has you meeting character after character that are all going through their individual struggles. They're usually meeting you when they're at their lowest, they have their defenses up, and as you spend more time with them, they slowly open up, trust you, and allow you into more personal parts of their lives. Every character has something that they're avoiding or they can't quite solve on their own, but with your friendship and guidance, they overcome their troubles and grow closer to your character. You end up feeling almost like you're playing through and watching an anime at times, because the game is full of anime cutscenes, and a lot of the game is expertly voiced by some of the biggest voice actors today. Just take a look at some of the voice actors' IMDb pages, and you'll surely see something you recognize. Probably my favorite fun fact is that the English voice actor that voices Sephiroth in the new Final Fantasy VII games plays a socially awkward, borderline autistic artist in Persona 5. I really can't say enough about the voice acting in this game. While it's not all voice acted, a surprising amount is. The voice actors bring these characters to life and elevate the already well-written story.
That castle and Kamoshida and that weird cat? What the hell's going on?
The story is, as I said, mostly centered around your character, who is not a fully blank slate. Your character does have a voice actor and a personality, but it's very minimal, as to let the player project a lot of their own personality onto the character as well. So it's not a full silent protagonist. There are times when you are able to choose your own dialogue, which usually doesn't drastically change the outcome of anything, but it can give you some secret stat bonuses in the background when it comes to your relationship with some characters, but it's primarily there for you to interact with the story. Like I said, there's times where you're just reading through a bunch of text or watching a bunch of dialogue, so the game tries to keep you engaged by giving you some input into these interactions. For some people, this may be a turnoff, as the choices aren't transformative, as in they don't have huge effects on things, but for people who love these games, it's not really an issue. There's a small pleasure in taking fun little jabs at characters and throwing them off balance with funny responses. But the game also lets you be sincere. For a game that's mostly about relationships and characters, these small choices really do go a long way in bringing these characters to life and giving them another dimension. When you say something wild to someone, it's legitimately fun to see how they react to it, whether they pick up on your sarcasm, whether it goes over their head, or whether it makes them roll their eyes at you. It's well written for each character, as they all have their own distinct personalities that's never forgotten in the writing. This is one of those things that may seem simple, but is really a result of really well written characters. There's so much to be said about each individual character and their own personal story arcs. I could literally make videos about it for the rest of the year, and if you're interested into deeper dives into this subject, please leave me a comment, as I am writing a lot of my Persona 5 content right now, and I'd be open to exploring different topics. Another thing that is so unique about Persona 5 is how long the games are. I'll be honest, I'm the kind of person that likes to complete things. like to check them off my list and move on, and there definitely were times where I wanted the game to wrap it up. A playthrough of the game, especially when playing through the Royal version of the game, which adds a bunch more characters and content, will take you over 100 hours to beat. And I don't mean over 100 if you do all the side quests, I mean that's 100 hours of story. I was over 150 hours in when I saw the credits roll. You have to really prepare yourself for the length of this game. If you're trying to go through it quickly, if you find yourself skipping through dialogue and just trying to beat the game, you're playing it wrong, and you really should just put it down for a bit and come back to it when you're ready. I started this game a year ago, and there were months at a time where I didn't play the game at all, until I picked it back up and finished the second half of the game in a few months. The game is made to be enjoyed slowly, like a 15-course meal at a fancy restaurant, so much so that the loading screen even reminds you to take your time. At hour 60-70, there's still new characters they're introducing, new locations, new game mechanics. The scope of this game is absolutely unreal, and for people that love this game, this can be a blessing and a curse. On one side, it's awesome that there's so much this game has to offer, there's so much content, and on the other hand, it makes it kind of hard to do a second playthrough, because not everybody has an extra 100 hours laying around. But for those of you that do, this is a great way to spend it. The last thing that I want to talk about are the little things. I've already mentioned so many throughout this video, but if you've played this game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's so many little details in this game that make it so special to its fans. It's almost impossible to mention all of them, but I'm gonna do my best to mention a few. So the owner of the coffee shop that your character lives at is obsessed with coffee, and he'll give you lessons on real-world coffee varieties as you progress his storyline. These are real coffee blends that you can order yourself in real life, and the device that he uses to brew his coffee is a real-life unique way to make coffee that you can also do yourself. Another fun little detail that stood out to me was at one point in the game, a character that really enjoys sweets makes this French dessert called a croquembouche, it's really hard to pronounce, it's a French word. It's basically this French puff pastry that is pretty difficult to make. And it just so happened the week that this happens in game where a character made this dessert, my wife in real life just happened to make it herself. She was just having fun in the kitchen and she showed it to me and I was like, huh. That's something that they made in the game as well. It's just something that was kind of fun and unique that the game pulls from real life. Another detail that I absolutely love are the menus. The shop that you purchase items at have their own super interactive menus and unique theme music, and if you stay idle for more than a few seconds, the shop owners will just start making small talk with your character about random things on their mind, like the weather.
It looks hot outside. I'd rather stay here than go home.
It's just a small little added detail that really gives this game its character. Another awesome thing is you can buy video games or rent DVDs that are all based on real life movies and games. Like the TV show House. In the game Persona, you can rent a DVD and watch Mouse. It's about a cocky, self-centered mouse doctor that's always right about everything. And there's tons of things like that. Persona 5, in my opinion, is a perfect example of Japanese developers absolutely dunking on American game devs. Not because they're more talented, not because American devs don't have the capabilities to make great games, which they absolutely have done and continue to do, but there is a difference in culture that the Japanese have where the little details just matter more. So many things in Persona 5 I feel like would have been cut if a Western studio made it, because they don't directly contribute to the bottom line of the game. They don't always directly contribute to the gameplay, the main story, and they would have been seen as not directly contributing to the sales of the game. And I just have a feeling this type of game with this level of detail just is not being made today in America, at least not with AAA studios.
Time to get a little crazy.
Stay focused.
So sometimes I wonder when I play games today as an adult, if the feeling I got when I played games when I was younger was just because I played them when I was young and impressionable, or if there was just something different about games today and they're just simply not as good as they used to be. The reality is it's a mix of both, but Persona 5 is a reminder that it's still possible to be immersed in a game, to be bought into a world so much that you just can't wait to turn it on again to see what happens with the characters. And it's that feeling that Persona 5 gives me that reminds me of how good games can be. And it's why so many people love Persona 5.